You're listening to Breaking BizDev with John Tyerman and Mark Wainwright. Conversations that break down, beat up, and redefine business development for the professional services firms of tomorrow. And now for your hosts, John and Mark.
Welcome, business developers, to another episode of Breaking BizDev. And today, Mark, we're going to break down what it means to specialize.
This is a fantastic episode. Oh, and by the way, welcome all the other people who don't sort of self-identify as a business developer. You're welcome here too. We want to make sure that we have a big tent, as you've said in the past, John, that we invite everybody, including myself, who have, in one way or another rejected that whole sort of identification of business developer because, John, it is fraught with problems. And that's why we are here. That's why we are breaking down and beating up BizDev. So welcome. And yes, we're going to talk about specialization, focus, positioning. And honestly, John, I think for a long time, I've just sort of thrown those concepts, those words kind of in one big pile. And I love how you've kind of teased them apart a little bit. And we're going to talk about that and some other stuff. So good.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into this one too, especially because of the reasons you just mentioned. And it was an interesting thought exercise to kind of go through this and really break that apart and just kind of understanding the differences between focus, specialization, and positioning. And then we're going to explore, why should firms position their brands around an area of specialization? It's kind of this paradox that is counterintuitive. And so that'll be good to explore. And then what are the different ways that firms can specialize? On the back end of this episode, we've got some examples of firms with good focus, good specialization, good positioning. So we'll give you some real examples of firms that maybe you can emulate or model yourself after.
Good. Yeah. And, we're not the only ones shouting from the mountaintop about focus and specialization and positioning. And there's some other fantastic voices on podcasts and just out there in the world and in professional services firms. So this is critical. And like you said, it's a bit of a paradox. It's a bit counterintuitive, but I think you and I, in our own ways, have been successful in these things, in positioning ourselves and focusing, specializing, developing some really focused expertise. So we've been successful with that. So we're not just pontificating and speculating here, right? We've experienced the benefits of it. I've observed other professional services firms who do the same thing, who have reaped the rewards. And on the other end of the spectrum, I know and deal with firms all the time who all but reject this concept of narrowing down, focusing on a niche, being focused experts, that kind of thing. So hopefully this turns a few of the naysayers towards more focus, more specialization, and reinforces how beneficial this can be for those who believe in it.
100%. I've done a lot of research on firms in the professional services space, and one common theme that's associated with high growth has been specialization. And so I've seen it quantifiably. I've been able to quantify that in research, that specialization is definitely a key to growth. So let's dig into it, Mark. Let's talk about the difference between focus, specialization, and positioning. I'll go ahead and define each one, and then we can just talk about it. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll start with focus. And focus really defines where consultants spend their efforts. So I think that one's pretty straightforward. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your energy?
Yeah, so it's a picking and choosing exercise.
It is.
So it's a filter. It's what am I going to focus on? What am I not going to focus on, right? The exercise of focusing is as much, if not more, about saying no than it is about saying yes.
Yep. So that could bubble up in terms of like the qualification criteria that you have on opportunities in your pipeline. Specialization, let's talk about that. Specialization signals a depth of understanding and relevant experience. And I like the way that we've defined this. And you and I went back and forth kind of wordsmithing these to try to get them to the right definitions.
Yeah.
And I like that we use the word signals a depth of understanding and relevant experience.
Yeah. Good.
So, all right. Positioning really ensures that understanding and that experience is recognized by the target market, that you're not a hidden gem in the industry, that the buyers understand the experience that you have and the understanding of their industry, and they're able to recognize that.
Yeah, in the Blue Ocean Strategy book, right? The book that could have been a blog post. No offense. It's a good one. But yeah, I mean, the concept there, right? You're swimming in blue water rather than the red shark infested waters of your competition. So yeah, that's that. And the nuance of that definition that you said there is that the market recognizes
exactly.
and understands that position, right? Rather than you thinking you're off on your own, but nobody really sees you or recognizes you as being good. So those are three. Yeah, let's dig into them. We'll circle back to focus. I wanted a little bit into focus,
Yeah.
Defining where you spend your effort. And obviously, we're focused on professional services and experts. So, where are experts spending their time? And every single time I bring this topic up when I'm talking to someone, the main objection that comes up is, okay, so you said we have to focus, so we say yes to some things and no to other things. So does that mean that we say no to every single new client, new prospective opportunity that shows up at the front door? And, my answer to that was no. You don't say no to things that show up at the front door. If they're a good fit, then you can proceed forward, right? Maybe it's a slightly outside that area of focus. You don't say no to that. But what you do say no to is the time and efforts and resources you spend in your proactive activities, right? So that's where you start to refine and narrow down.
What are some examples of those proactive activities, Mark? Where does the rubber hit the road there?
Yeah, so we've talked about asking for referrals. When you approach people that you know and trust, who know and trust you, and you're seeking for introductions to others you could help, you are very careful when you are selecting those individuals to go and talk to make sure that they are part of this area of focus, because obviously they're going to hopefully lead you to places of that same area of focus. If you found that you've had success working with small municipalities doing X type of work, you want to be really careful on who you go and talk to. I know 2 other people at small municipalities who do this, but who have this specific kind of a need, that sort of thing. So when we're talking about referrals, you're selective about who you approach. And then when you're talking to them, you're really careful to provide them a crystal clear picture of who your ideal client is to help them filter and say, oh yeah, okay, so I'm not going to refer Mark to these folks because what he just described to me is outside of his area of focus. So that's that. And then obviously from a marketing standpoint, it's a big deal. From a prospecting standpoint, it's a big deal. And prospecting is that proactive one-to-one outreach. Yeah. So it's the simple exercise of running this filter through and saying, are the people that I am proactively reaching out to inside of this area of focus, or are they not?
100%. And you mentioned marketing, and I'll just give a couple examples, where you spend your time creating content and what content you spend your time creating around. If you're going after the manufacturing industry, maybe you shouldn't be talking about sports and entertainment, right? I love that focus is where you spend your time, where you spend your efforts, your resources. And then specialization, we talked about this signal of a depth of understanding and relevant experience. And so I would say that that's a result of where you put your focus and effort becomes that specialization, the clients that you actively pursue, the types of work that you do, the types of services that you offer. And then eventually the market understands and recognizes that specialization. And then you can kind of shape that. And that's the positioning angle of it. And you can shape that with your marketing, with your sales efforts.
Right. And the specialization comes with time and effort. It comes with this continual pursuit of deeper and deeper insight and knowledge in a specific area. And I truly do not believe that it is limiting. There is almost endless depth to any area of focus. So I think if people are thinking, oh, we can't specialize because we're going to get bored, or I want to do all these different types of things. It's like, I think there is nearly endless opportunity to learn more, to gain deeper and deeper expertise, and then be recognized for that. It opens up the possibility of the outside world recognizing that you are a visible expert in this area. So it takes time. And then lo and behold, you find that you're positioned well away from others if you've done all this right.
Mark, we often say don't boil the ocean on this podcast, right? And I think there's this counterintuitive nature where I've experienced this. Business owners, firm owners, they're reluctant to specialize because they have this fear of missing out on other segments of the market that maybe they've had experience with in the past, maybe they've had success with in the past, but it's scary to them. There's perceived risk associated with narrowing your target addressable market.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. And that's the obvious downside. Absolutely.
Yeah. But
there's a bunch of fantastic reasons why you would. You bring up the good point in that you have to look at the scale. You have to balance this. You have to go back and forth. You'd have to do your pros and cons. For us, there's a number of really fantastic benefits of this that we'll talk about here that outweigh all the negative stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dig into those benefits. You had a bunch written down here.
Yeah, there's 4 bullet points that I've got here in terms of why firms should position their brand around an area of specialization. Number 1, it enhances the trust that your clients have within you. So demonstrating a level of mastery or expertise in a specific industry or in a specific service offering, it builds credibility around you and it builds trust and deepens the relationship that you have with your clients. So that's number 1.
Yeah, the trust equation, right? From Charlie Green, right? One of the major components about that is credibility, and credibility is the one that says, I'm talking to an expert here, right? So the more focused expertise you can show, the increase you show in that whole sort of credibility thing.
Reason number 2 why you should position your brand around an area of specialization is it gives you operational efficiency, right? So if you're able to specialize in a specific industry and you understand the nuances of that industry and how they operate, you're able to develop more streamlined processes around and anticipate behaviors of clients so that you can allocate your resources more effectively, so that you can deliver more value to your clients. So that's another benefit of specialization is you get more repeatable processes.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that holy grail that we're all chasing is that process improvement thing where we're constantly experimenting and improving with time. And I experience that. I know that you experience it. We try things. I mean, even as large organizations all the way down to small solo practitioners experience this, whether we do it consciously or overtly or not, but we are constantly doing things we've done for a while, testing, improving them, and testing out new things to see if they'll work as well. So absolutely.
All right. Reason number 3 why you should position your brand around an area of specialization. And here's this word that you love, Mark, the V word. So you have a clear value proposition. And I love your take on value. And I think it had a light bulb moment for me the other day. But a narrow focus really makes it easier to communicate your offering and value to potential clients. What's your take on value?
Yeah. Well, not to pontificate too much on it, right? The issue people gloss over value, the importance of it, the perception of it, just sort of like the understanding of the term value. The big thing the big speed bump with me when the word value comes into a conversation is that the consultant, and the whole concept of the value proposition and what you offer to your prospective clients and what you offer to the marketplace, the client is in complete control of value, right? They are ones who will or will not assign a certain level of value to something. So when we talk about clear value propositions, for me, that means I take it and tweak it a little bit. And I say a clear value proposition is something that comes through an effort of listening, questioning, understanding, being curious, to where you can understand your client and their needs and then bring your expertise to them in a way that fits with, the things they value, the things that are important to them. So that's how you get to a place where someone highly values your work, is that you've done a really good job of matching what you do and your expertise to their needs, right? So it's less about a proposition, because I refer to this whole value proposition thing as it's a value, it's a guess, right? And we don't want to find ourselves guessing too much. So, the way we avoid guessing is we approach our prospective clients with a really good sense of curiosity. We understand their needs, and then we're able to match our work, our expertise to the things they value.
Love that.
Sorry, I soapbox? I soapbox too long.
No, you didn't. And I wanted you to a little bit, because I thought that that's a really great perspective. And I liken it to, you've played the game of Battleship before, right? Where you got to guess where the boats are. Yeah. And I liken it to, it's like in Battleship, if you have a good focus, if you have a good area of specialization that you've built good positioning around, you've cut that quadrant in half, right?
Yeah. Right.
and you're starting with half the board. And so each shot is twice as likely to be a hit. Or in other words, you're closer to getting that understanding, going
Yeah.
through those lines of questioning and inquiry and practicing curiosity, because you have a specialization in either an offering or an industry or a market, some kind of a market or a specific segment of the market. You have that, you come to the table closer than you would if you were a generalist.
Yeah, I love that. I love that battleship analogy, right? And the only way you're going to be able to hit more than you miss is by getting to know the person you're playing battleship against, right? Your opponent, right? You're like, oh yeah, I've known John for a while. I know that John does that thing where he likes to cram all his boats in one little corner, right? Me, on the other hand, I like to spread them out and give them all a little bit of room, and they're all moving in the same direction, right? They're all pointing up or down. That's so funny. I love that visual.
There you go. Well, that's our job, Mark, is to give our listeners something to picture in their minds.
Yeah, that's funny. I like it.
All right. So we talked about clear value proposition. The other bullet point that I have and why you should position your brand around an area of specialization, why your firm should specialize, is it gives you a competitive advantage, right? So if you differentiate your firm based on some level of specialization, it can set you apart from other firms in the market. And so you're able to command a more premium price. You're able to attract a specific kind of buyer. Those are some of the advantages that come with specialization.
Right. The competitive advantage thing, the first word in that statement is competition. Is like, well, if you lessen the competition to the point where there is, very little or none, then you are the choice in the marketplace. And, I don't want to underscore the premium pricing thing too much, because I think that's all a little bit relative. But I do, on balance, I do believe that you will have the opportunity to price your services in alignment with what the client is willing to pay, i.e. what they value. But if you've done a good enough job, they highly value you because you are a visible expert. So the pricing will all come along with that, right? So you just get lost in a pricing competition if there's way too many people around you that look just like you, that talk just like you, that walk just like you. So it's going to be a fight to the bottom. So yeah, premium pricing is a big deal.
Yeah. If you're not specializing, get ready to sharpen your pencil. Right?
Oh, God, sharpen your pencil. You're listening to Breaking BizDev,
the podcast that beats up, breaks down, and redefines business development for the professional services firms of tomorrow. Your hosts are John Tyerman, founder of Red Cedar Marketing, the podcast marketing company for experts and professional services firms,
and Mark Wainwright, principal consultant and founder of Wainwright Insight, the fractional sales manager and sales consultant to professional services firms.
If you find this podcast helpful, please help us by following the show and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts.
And now, back to the show.
All right. So now that we talked about why firms should specialize, and we're making the case for it, how should you do it? So we alluded to this earlier in terms of different industries you could target. That's certainly one way. But how do you know which one to target? Right? How do you know which service you need to focus on? We've got a couple of bullet points here. We've got 3 that we can go through and then we can kind of expand upon.
Yeah, good.
All right. So I think a good starting place is really to evaluate your strengths and your past successes. So what are the areas where you have a proven track record, and where do you have existing expertise that you can point to, and maybe past clients or case studies? That's the first place to start.
Yep, makes sense.
So you can group clients together in different ways, like looking at different characteristics of your clients, looking at revenue, client lifetime value. Like, what are the clients that are the most profitable and have the most margin? What characteristics do they have together? Right. And that gives you kind of like the lay of the land and where to start. All right. So point number 2, and how you should specialize. So if you understand what your internal strengths are, then you can go out to the market and you can pinpoint areas of demand and find where those underserved niches are.
Yeah. Go talk to the market.
Mm-hmm.
Go talk to clients. Absolutely.
Yep. If you have a hunch, go talk to clients to validate that hunch. Do competitive research. We talked about competitive advantage. Who are the players who specialize in that niche? If you have an area of specialization you're considering, who are the other players in the market that also specialize in that? And then how are you going to be able to differentiate your firm against that set of competitors?
Yep. Very good. Very good.
And then finally, selecting the right niche or selecting the right area of specialization. Does it align with your long-term goals? That specialization, what impact does that have on the long-term projections of your company and where you want to take it and how you want to grow?
Right. Do you have the right expertise internally to continue to pursue that? Do you need to bring new people in? Tons of considerations there.
And then does this mean we need to get rid of all the other stuff?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, it does. No, these are great. The way you have these kind of laid out here, it sounds to me like the first bullet point is sort of a SWOT exercise where you're identifying strengths and opportunities and you're minimizing threats and weaknesses. You're trying to mitigate all that sort of stuff. So you're doubling down. So absolutely, this is a largely internal exercise on doubling down on the things that you can really win with, the things you're really, really good at. So that one's good. Things that are profitable, things that the marketplace needs. Totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The market research one. Yeah. There you go. Talk to your clients, right? No surprise. Go talk to them. So stress test it. Just get a litmus test on your ideas and everything from the marketplace. So yeah, that's a big one.
All right. And so once you go through that exercise and you figure out, okay, here are some potential ways that we could specialize. I think that I liken specialization to alchemy. And here's what I mean by that. On their own, each potential way that you could specialize doesn't really move the needle that much. Chances are that you're going to run into competition if you specialize in a specific industry or if you specialize in a specific offering. However, when you combine different areas of specialization, that's really where you can stand out.
Yeah, I totally agree. You and I subscribe fully to that. Others do as well. We do our little Venn diagram exercise, of here's who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and this is who I'm going to do it for. And we play in that little overlap area in the middle, and we just have to make sure that area is big enough, right? That's our total addressable market sort of size. Are there enough buyers out there for what we want to sell? But yeah, there's all those little circles here, and you've got the four. I can run through the four that you've got listed here. You've got your service offering. What are you offering? What's your expertise you're offering to the marketplace? The next one is the industry. Who, right? Who are you? What industry? Where have you had the most success, and where can you continue to grow? Client type, similar to industry, but a little different as well. But client type is that small group. You noted some like startups. Are they nonprofits? Are they very large organizations? Are they certain departments within larger organizations, municipal, whoever? And the last one is geography, which for some organizations is critical. For us, like you and I, less so. But for people who can do work all over the place, less of a consideration. Others, those clients that I work with, their geography is massive. When I work with architects and engineers, they have to be licensed to work in different states and municipalities. And if they are not, they can't play there. So that's fine. So yeah, these are four good ones: service offering, industry, client type, and geographic location.
And there's many, many other ways that your firm could specialize.
Yeah.
And so these are just four examples. And I've even pulled examples of real firms out there, different kinds. We've got some accounting firms. We've got some financial services, some architecture, design, engineering, tax. So I'd like to just showcase each one of these and just kind of make it real. Let's give our listeners some examples. What do you say?
Yeah, you came up with a good list here, and most of these are totally new to me. So yeah, great.
All right. So this first one is an accounting firm specifically for restaurants, and they're called Tablespoon.
Yeah, I love it.
So you've got the service offering, accounting solutions, specifically for an industry, the restaurant industry. So here's a great example of that alchemic combination of specialized service offering for specialized industry. And I think that's an example of something that, Mark, you and I have both done, right? Sales management for professional services,
right?
Podcast marketing for professional services. So that's one example, or a couple examples there.
Yeah, good.
Let's go to the AEC world. Jaffe Holden, they offer acoustic design services for performing arts, educational, and cultural spaces.
Yeah. Any of the experts that I work with in that field recognize the different specializations within each area of expertise, but a lot of them are hesitant to really double down on it. And, this is a great one. Someone like this that you just mentioned, this Jaffe Holden group that does acoustic design services for performing arts, in order to make sure that their total addressable market the market size is big enough, they are likely doing work all over the place.
Yep.
Right. They're either doing work remotely, or they're shipping people, or they have small offices all over the place. So yeah, that's a good example.
Here's another one from the AEC world, Lloyd Sports and Engineering. They focus on planning, design, and construction of sports facilities since they coined the term sports engineering in 1987.
Yeah, good. Right.
So
yeah,
they've been around for a while.
Yeah, those big, massive venues that you're sitting and looking around thinking, how in the world did this thing come together? It requires a specific expertise, radically different from someone who, is designing and then building a single family home. It's just different worlds, but they all started out in the same place. They all started out in school doing the same kind of stuff. And then at some point, this group said, hey, we're going to double down in this specific area. Likely it started with a smaller project that ended up being a bigger project, and their client took them there. But yeah, they doubled down on it.
It's also, I think, a case example of category creation, where they coined the term sports engineering as a category and became the leaders in that category.
Good example.
All right, so let's go back to the accounting and financial services area of professional services and driving transactions. This is actually a client of mine. They offer M&A advisory services specifically for chauffeur transportation companies.
I love it. It's just like in 1,000 years, I couldn't do the Venn diagram exercise of where is the market for that? But it's, okay, so it's there. Apparently it's there because they're making a go of it. So it's merger and acquisition consulting to chauffeured transportation companies, right? Yeah. So that's crazy.
It's an industry that there's a lot of smaller companies, and there's a lot of churn in the industry that goes on.
Yeah.
And right now there's a lot of consolidation that's happening. So he's in a good time and place right now. But yeah, it's very, very super niche, and he's chock full of clients.
I love it. That is so cool. And you had the last one listed there, which is also kind of, financial services, or Friedman Tax, who is an accounting services company specifically for tattoo parlors. That's right. We say that, and it's fun, but there's a handful of those in there, like accounting solutions specifically for restaurants and everything else. And, one side of the coin is the marketplace large enough, and can I become visible within that marketplace? But also, when these people are out looking for help, they are looking for people that they're looking for consultants, organizations, whatever else. They're looking for help that gets them, right? That they don't have to be with an accountant that, has this big, long learning curve, right? They want to work with someone who's been there before. So, it's like, yes, I work with tattoo parlors. That's all I do. So every tattoo parlor out there is like, I just want to work with my people. And it looks like this accountant who works with tattoo parlors like ours, that's our people, right? And everybody shows up and they've got their ink and they talk about it. And, so, I think that's great, right? There's that two critical sides of the coin. The one we've talked about a lot is separating yourself, specializing, focusing, everything else. And the other thing that we haven't talked about much is that the people are out there looking for you.
Yeah.
Because they want to find people that they can relate to. So they're out there looking, and I say this like it's simple, but all you need to do is get yourself out there, become visible, right? And your driving transactions client, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make themselves more visible by working with you and doing the podcast stuff. So I love it. Great examples. And we could probably link to these in the notes or whatever else, but these are great. We'd love to hear about other organizations that people have come across out there that are just hyper-focused and really successful. I think
send us some examples. If you're listening to this and you have a great example of a firm that specializes really well and positions themselves really well, or if that's your firm, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Or if you think you're positioned really well and we don't, send us a note anyway. So this is not simple. This is not simple in industries where the vast majority of consulting firms, professional services firms, where the vast majority are just generalists, where they're just like, we do a little bit of a lot of things and we're happy doing that. Okay. But this is hard. And there's a little bit of a taking the plunge thing. There's definitely a little bit of editing. The analogy that I bring to this, it's maybe this is off topic, but maybe it's not, maybe it's right on, is that all these firms start off as big chunks of marble, big blocks of marble, and you, right, with every little chip of your chisel, you start to edit that block away to some final form, some sculpture of the organization that you want to be, right? And that's what this is, with every chip you make, every decision you make, every client you take on or don't take on, you continue to refine that big block till it becomes this form that you're incredibly proud of, that people love, that draws attention, all those things. So yeah, that's the picture I always have in my mind when I talk about this subject is, what do you want to look like? And understand that every decision that you make, every chip you take at that block is either moving you in the right direction or taking you in the other direction. So it's, I don't know, John, I think this is almost like this is a deal breaker for us, John. It's just like, man, you got to specialize.
I love that block of marble analogy. And so if you want your firm to look like the Statue of David by Michelangelo, make sure that you specialize and really niche down, because there's riches in the niches, Mark.
Riches in the niches.
You thought we were going to get through without me saying that, but we didn't.
You nailed it. You nailed it. Good.
Well, I think we broke this one down sufficiently.
Good. It's a fascinating topic. Like I said, there's a lot of great voices out there that are talking about this. If organizations just think this is nearly impossible, I'll tell you it's not. And I'll tell you, organizations of just about any size, provided the addressable marketplace is large enough, you can narrow down as much as you'd like, and there's tons of benefit. So yeah, I think this is a good one, John. Until next time.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Breaking BizDev. Subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or listen to the show at breakingbizdev.com. This episode was produced by Red Cedar Marketing. If you think a business podcast is right for your company, visit redcedarmarketing.com to learn more.